Hi there, I'm Danny Flex and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. We're here every Monday at 4:30 PM to talk about the boxing action of the weekend just gone. And while I'm happy to touch on some of the other events of the weekend, like Adrian Broner's laborious return to the ring, albeit came out with a contentious win, and a knockout of the year contender, obviously still very early in the year, but a contender nonetheless, from Oscar Valdez against Miguel Berchelt. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the Matchroom show because I watched all of it and I've got more of an investment in it, having watched many of the fighters on there throughout their careers. And we'll start with the main event, of course. Josh Kelly came up short in his bid for the European welterweight title against David Avanesyan in a fight first scheduled way back in December 2018. Now, before we go into the ins and outs of the result and the performance, I just want to say I think we should give a lot of credit to Kelly for taking such a big step up in what was only his 12th professional fight. Yes, he's a GB Olympian, but they're two different sports, the amateur and the professional codes. He fought Avenesian in his 12th fight. I think when he was originally supposed to fight him, it would have been his 9th or 10th professional fight. So there's no doubting his self-confidence or his bravery, but unfortunately it wasn't enough on Saturday night at Wembley Arena. It didn't look that way early on. Kelly, for the first 2 or 3 rounds, was boxing as well as I'd ever seen him. His reactions were good. He was fast. His footwork was great. He was able to turn Avenesian pretty comfortably when he was backed up towards the ropes or into corners. And he was able to find places for his body shots and his stiff jab. And it looked like he'd kind of warmed into the fight and settled down. But then Avenesian began to crank up the pressure. Kelly was cut in a very strange place for a boxing match. You don't see it very often. He was cut on the back of the head, but it bled profusely throughout, all the way down his face. It looked like he'd been cut grotesquely somewhere on his face, like on his cheek or his eye, but it wasn't. It was the blood flowing through from the gash on the back of his head. And I don't know how much effect that had on him in terms of, putting him off and dripping down his face. I don't think it obscured his vision or anything like that, but I think maybe it was just another thing against him as Avenesian started to up the pressure, cut the space down quicker, short, quick steps across the ring to put Kelly in a disadvantageous position. And then Avenesian was able to land tapping shots to the body and to the head before unloading the bigger shots when he felt the opening was there. Very clever tactics. The tactics you would have expected him to use against someone as quick and slick as Josh Kelly likes to be when he's given the time and space to do so. Avenesian might not have applied that pressure from round 1, but it wasn't much longer after that when he really put his foot to the gas pedal, or accelerate pedal, sorry, sometimes I forget, I'm not American, and really took it to him and just showed not just his intelligence, but also that experience, being a veteran, having fought at world level a number of times, knowing what works for him and what doesn't. He'll never know his own style better. And credit also, of course, to trainer Carl Greaves in that Avenesian corner, who did absolutely everything right. The tactics were spot on. And it was the 6th round where ultimately Kelly was dropped twice. And the second time prompted the towel to come in from Kelly's cornerman, Adam Booth. And that retirement was accepted by the referee. Absolutely no complaints with Booth's action or the referee accepting it. Kelly looked spent. It was only round 6, but he'd been pushed back for 3 or 4 rounds. Avenesian had really taken over from the 5th round, I'd say. Round 6, the first knockdown was more due to just an abundance of pressure more than a single shot. Kelly touched down with both hands, didn't actually fall to the canvas. So he was counted then, said he was okay to continue, but just looked bewildered, tired, a bit fed up. And then the second knockdown was a heavier one. Good shots from Avenesian. He's always been a bit of a puncher. And then Kelly went down for the second time. The towel came in. And I think Kelly gave a kind of sigh of resignation when that happened. He knew that he'd been found wanting by this point. And that's not a criticism of him. Avenesian will beat a lot of good fighters. But in this case, a lot of people said afterwards, was it a step too soon for Kelly? Just his 12th professional fight. I know Tony Jeffries put something out on social media where he seemed to be blaming the promoter for this. And then some other people, including Tony Bellew, came back and said, no, you want to focus on the manager. In this case, they're the ones who accept the fights or push for the fights. And it it's true to say it wasn't a fight that Kelly had to take. He's not the champion going up against a mandatory contender. He wanted to fight Avenesian. His team did. They thought he was ready. Maybe Avenesian was underrated a little bit as well by them, more so than Kelly being overrated by his team. I'm not sure. What I would say is that the majority of fighters that Adam Booth's had success with and employ what a lot of people now call the Adam Booth style have been big punchers. So the likes of David Haye, early on Wayne Alexander, but David Haye, George Groves, Andy Lee, they all possessed fight-altering power and had that kind of fast twitch, explosive style where they fight and burst. They didn't need to, produce work hard for 3 minutes every round style work rate, because they always had that punch. And not only is it good to have that punch to get you out of jail if you're really up against it, but also if you're getting hit stiffly with shots every time you try and come in as a pressure fighter, it's got to dissuade you a little bit from taking those risks. If Kelly had more power in his arsenal, and he said he was hitting harder than ever in the build-up to the fight, but obviously maybe not quite hard enough. But if Kelly was able to punch with the authority of a Groves or a Haye or an Andy Lee, someone like that, then maybe Avenesian wouldn't have been able to crank up the pressure quite so effortlessly, or seemingly effortlessly, and quite so early in the fight as well. And also, he would have been exerting his own damage on Avenesian at the same time, which would have made him a bit slower, would have taken the wind out of his sails with body shots, that kind of thing. But Kelly doesn't have that power. That's not to say he's a non-puncher. That's not to say he can't punch at all. But he's not a puncher in the David Haye or Andy Lee mould. And when you're trying to fight on your toes, back foot, slickness against a good pressure fighter, a high-level pressure fighter, you're always going to struggle if you haven't got that big punch to keep him off. Now, I know people will be now scrambling around thinking of fighters that Adam Booth's taken to titles who don't have that big punch. Ryan Burnett springs to mind. But Burnett never fought an elite opponent. He was forced to retire early, which is a shame in itself, and won 2 world titles, did excellently in his career, unified belts at bantamweight, but he never fought that, Naoya Inoue or someone of that nature. And I'm not comparing Inoue to Avenesian. I'm just saying that Burnett's issue of not having that huge punch but carrying out that kind of slick style might have been found wanting later on in his career. Mick Conlan, we wait and see, but Conlan's not really the same sort of style as a Josh Kelly. He's happy to mix it up. But again, he hasn't got a massive punch. But I think if he goes up against an elite pressure fighter, we might find that to be an issue. We don't know yet. And I guess it's the same with Kelly. They didn't know if he hit hard enough to keep Avenesian off him. We found out on Saturday night he didn't. But there's every belief that watching him in sparring, on the pads, on the bags, they felt that he did have enough of a punch, a respectable enough shot to keep Avenesian honest, if you like. And as it turned out, he didn't. And he couldn't keep the pace that he was setting early on and the pace that Avenesian stuck with. Josh Kelly couldn't keep that pace going for much longer than those 6 rounds until the stoppage came. And that is part of that style. If you're going to be an explosive, punch-picking, type boxer, you're not going to be able to exert energy for 3 minutes of every round. Even Canelo, who's probably the most famous explosive counter-puncher in the world right now, even he wouldn't be able to fight for 3 solid minutes of every round with that style. It's just not, they don't go together. But he doesn't have to, because A, he's a massive puncher in his own right, so he can keep people off of him. And B, he's got excellent defense. And Josh Kelly's got good defense, but he hasn't got Canelo defense. No one has. Canelo's a maestro. He's brilliant defensively. His upper body movement's exemplary. His footwork's improved massively. I don't want to make this all about Canelo because it's nothing to do with Josh Kelly against David Avanesyan, but I'm just making the point that there's key things that go with that style that you need. They're prerequisites to be an elite performer with that style. And at least at the moment, and let's bear in mind he's still only 26 years old, he was an Olympian, he still only fought 12 times as a professional, but Josh Kelly doesn't have those attributes to that level yet. And we know that. And this is all it is. It's a reality check. This is where you are. This is your current level. And now it's a challenge laid down. And Conor Benn said this on Sky just after the fight. It's how much he wants it. And that's not to say that Kelly didn't want to beat Avenesian. He just didn't have the tools to do so. But what Conor Benn means, I think, is that This is now a test of Josh Kelly's character. Can he get over this defeat, identify clearly what he needs to improve on so that this doesn't happen again, and come back and do so? I think he can. I think he absolutely loves the sport and he really wants to improve. This will devastate him, this defeat. He can be quite a sensitive guy and he'll be gutted by this. But at the age of 26 and with the athletic gifts that he possesses, this is by no means over for him. You know, a lot of people are like, well, he's been found out. He hasn't been found out. He's just had it starkly illustrated to him where he sits right now in his career. He's not at a stage or an experience level where it's too late to teach him anything new. You know, they thought he was ready. In this case, they were wrong. But maybe Avenesian produced something that they weren't expecting as well. Kelly's by no means out of it. And as for Avenesian, he deserves something bigger. But then they're talking about world title shots. I don't think beating Josh Kelly, as talented as Kelly is, means you warrant a world title shot. Even the run of form that Avenesian's on at European level, beating Kerman Leharaga twice, defending the belt twice against someone else before Kelly, whose name escapes me, but he wiped him out early. Spanish guy, again, but I can't think of his name. I don't think that warrants in itself a world title shot. We saw Avenesian before as an interim champion, WBA regular title fight against Lamont Peterson, which he lost to Shane Mosley, of course. Oh, sorry, beat Shane Mosley, lost to Lamont Peterson. So he's been found wanting at the very top level. And that's not to say he can't have another run at it, but I don't think he should straight away go into fighting a Spence or a Crawford. Maybe an Ugas, if it's going to be a world title shot. But I'd like to see him against someone a little bit further down the food chain, you know, earn that world title shot. But maybe that's an unpopular opinion. I think when we see guys beat these built-up British fighters, especially an Olympian, we think, wow, he definitely deserves a world title shot now because he's upset the odds. And I think a lot of people enjoyed his victory because, you know, it's a bit of an underdog story, hard work beats talent kind of thing, although Avenesian's got a fair dose of talent himself. And I agree with all of that. I'm just not sure that victory means he should jump straight into a world title shot, or that it would be he would be best served by doing that. I think he could do with a kind of Bridger fight, if you like, not Bridger weight, but a Bridger fight. Now, I've waffled on about all this for long enough, so let me quickly round up the rest of the card. Ryan Charlton gave a good effort and dropped Florian Marcoux, put a stop to his showboating, at least temporarily. But Marcoux eventually got the stoppage. Best I've seen him perform so far as a pro against probably his biggest test. So all credit to him. Ryan Charlton can come again. Needs to add some nuances perhaps to his, you know, undoubted power and strength. But very entertaining fight. The card as a whole, credit to Eddie Hearn, Matchroom. Really, really enjoyed the show actually. Much better than last week. And last week was pretty good anyway, actually, as it turned out, the lead show. Less said about my wrong assessment of a mismatch in the main event, the better. But still really good this week. Robbie Davis Jr. unfortunately came up short against Gabriel Valenzuela. Tough Mexican, talented. And Davis Jr. just appeared to have a bit of an off night as well against a good opponent. There was a lot of contention about whether he should have stayed southpaw, which is what his trainer Dominic Ingle was imploring him to do, or whether he should have gone back to orthodox. I felt that as a southpaw, it wasn't that he was getting tagged so much, but when he was going into exchanges, and I said this on Twitter, he was switching back into an orthodox stance as he approached the exchange, which was leading to him getting caught often with the right hand from Valenzuela. Now, you could say, well, then he shouldn't be going southpaw if he can't switch effectively back and forth. Then fair enough. But I think it was a lack of discipline and experience of being in that southpaw stance rather than just, you shouldn't be a southpaw against Valenzuela. I think an actual southpaw, a natural southpaw, would have had a lot more success against Valenzuela. So there was that. We also saw Jordan Gill get past his own Mexican challenge. So he did very well against, why is the name escaping me? Jordan Gill fought Cesar Juarez. There you go. Didn't have to look it up. I knew it was in there somewhere. Former world title challenger, fought Isaac Dogbay among others. And Gill just looked good, just as he had in fight camp last year against Nathan Bennett. No, sorry, not Nathan Bennett. Reese Bellotti. It was Dawson Smith who fought Nathan Bennett. Names all over the place because I've gone past the 10-minute mark. It's all gone wrong. But yeah, Jordan Gill looked really good against Cesar Juarez. He's due another step up now, I would say, as well. And we also saw the debut of Romford Ball heavyweight Johnny Fisher, who stopped Matt Gordon as he was widely expected to, but looked good doing so, looked sharp. There's a lot to work with there, athletic, determined. It'll be interesting to watch his journey. Now it's time for you guys to tell me what you think in the comments below. What do you think of Kelly Avenesian? What lessons do you draw from it? What would you like to see next for both men? And then anything else from that card or the other cards from the weekend, it'd be great to get your feedback. I'll be back on Thursday for ReFLEXions, 4:30 p.m. And next week, Monday, same time for the next ReFLEXions. As always, really appreciate your time, and I will see you all soon. Cheers.